tonight. He was feeling the need for a little rest, I think. He's a very energetic young man, and so he I think, just got feeling a little bit low on energy there. You know, we were reading in the complete works of Swami Abhedananda in volume 7, The Way to the Blessed Life. Wonderful, wonderful chapter. And the end of it again, I think we might do well to read. I think it was so such a summary, summation, synthesis, if you will. He said, speaking of the way to the blessed life, this blessed life is described in the Upanishads. The realization of the Atman, God infinite shining seen within, or the eternal truth, produces a revolution within us. At that time, all the knots of desires for transitory things are torn asunder. All doubts cease forever. All questions are solved. And the soul becomes free, emancipated, and perfect. And he's quoting from the Upanishads. I like to think that the Upanishads are the wisdom literature of the ancient sages who climbed above, if you will, the timberline of the mountain of God. And having in the warm weather discovered meditation, having been found in India, they experienced the highest union with Brahman, which of course is not only, you can say, their birthright, but their very essence. So I love the description that was made by, I believe, Swamiji, correcting Edward Arnold, who wrote about Buddha in a wonderful book called The Light of Asia. And you remember Vivekananda said, as Buddha had a message for the East, I have a message for the West. So whatever Edward Arnold was trying to say was that, for example, when the salt dal goes to plumb the depth of the ocean, he was kind of saying that it dissolved in the ocean, and drew certain conclusions from that. And Vivekananda pointed out so wonderfully that in Vedanta, which talks about the plenum, the fullness, the salt dal didn't disappear. It realized, with its understanding of its union with the ocean, that it always was the ocean. This is a very big thing. So these great ancient seers, you see, said that about the blessed life. And so Swami Abhedananda says, remember, one of the 16 fully illumined, that to us means Nirvikalpa Samadhi, disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. The way to such a blessed life is also described. Vedanta says, quote, that realization will come through constant hearing, constant thinking, and proper meditation. Hearing of the truth, reflecting upon the truth, and meditating upon it. So first of all, hear constantly and repeat that your true life is divine, immortal, and perfect, Constant hearing will bring before your mental eye this ideal, and then you will begin to feel it. Secondly, think of your present conditions. See where you are. Let each of your nerves and brain cells pulsate with the idea that your true nature is divine and free. And then you will get the result of thinking. Thirdly, concentrate your mind on that divine being, capital B, or on your true nature, or life, whose reflection the apparent life is. Meditate on the central truth of oneness and unite the apparent ego with that perfect life, or perfect nature, from which proceed all blessedness, holiness, happiness, and peace. Through this concentration and meditation, the blessed life, or divine communion, is attained. I just love this man. I have to tell you. I got a thing about Swami Abhedananda now, because he certainly can reach the elevated levels of speech. A lot to think about here, and we've done some of it, but the fact is, you know, he immersed himself in our culture for 20, 25 years. That's no mere schmear. He talked before thousands. I believe in Brooklyn. There's something called the Ethical Culture Society of Brooklyn. Was kind of like a misunderstood intellectual city like Chicago. Oh, yeah. He came, don't you see, from one perspective to further Swami Vivekananda's ideal to bring Vedanta to the West. He was not transporting India to the West. Can you feel the difference? I like to say that the Englishman never leaves home, because wherever he is, for example, even Africa, he takes a little bubble, a little plastic bubble, and places it over him, and in South Africa, dresses for dinner. And the Frenchman never leaves home. It's supposed to be loving fun, because he's homesick. Now, our job, if we really want to be true to Vivekananda, seems to me rather plain, is not to bring India, that is to say, bring India and everything it has, but Indian culture, Indian, you know what, I don't want to upset anybody, but Hinduism. Vivekananda picked out the word Vedanta, which has more than one meaning. It's one of 6 schools of a philosophical system. Yes, it is that. But Vedanta society is much, much more in the West, in the United States. My friends, we're not doing Swamiji justice to have Vedanta societies that are 99% Indian, unless every one of these Indians who now, by now, to the second, third generation, are you aware? I mean, this is just kind of fun. If this isn't fun, I don't know what is. This is 2021. Some 4 years from now, we hope that there will be an election. in this country for president. And it's not only not impossible, there is a scenario which says it's likely that two women of Indian descent, of course, by law, born in America, therefore Americans, will be running against each other for president. How about that for hitting the ground trotting? You know, the folded his parachute before he landed and hit the ground running. Now, this is something that's worth thinking about. Yes, we happen to, in the Vedanta Society of Hollywood, we really do want, very much we do. More than that, we're hungry for it, particularly the Protestants, for which tradition I come, because we did away with a lot of the stained glass windows and statues of saints and intermediaries, trying to go directly to God through Jesus. And so we're hungry for ritual. We're hungry for pujas. Oh yeah. And I shouldn't get too funny here because somebody's going to take a swat. But you know what they say about, this is a joke, son. They say, you know, say what you will about Catholic statuary. On a slow Sunday, it looks like they got a full house. Amen. Our job is not to recreate, however, as wonderful as every part of the panoply of India, according to the different ways one wishes to climb the mountain, and that's between you and God, through the mediation of the head Swami, the shepherd. That's the way it works in America. But in any event, your guru, who knows you better than you know yourself and will help you find your way, not his way. So as these climbings go on, our job is not to create little pockets of India, unless those Indian people, yes, 99% all, or whatever, realize they're here because of Swamiji. They're here to fulfill his message of bringing, I have his statement. As Buddha had a message for the East, I have a message for the West. So yes, I happen to feel that every person of Indian descent who is now in America, just off the plane, second generation, third generation is getting, but whatever, is a minister. I happen to love the expression, I happen to come from Martin Luther, with a slight change in translation. He believed in the ministry of all believers. I believe the Indian folks are here to bring us to God. Hope you don't mind, I can get carried away too. So there's our dear beloved Swami Abhedananda, and last time we came to the concept, or at least the time before that, it's very subtle because people are different. But that in the three, you see, there are three paths, you could say, of the way up the mountain. And the thesis that we were trying to maintain last time was that whatever one's path, and they are not mutually exclusive according to one of these paths, one of these views, they are all Advaitist. The Ramakrishna order of India is Advaitist, non-dual. Some of us like to use the word monist. The three states of consciousness the West has discussed, and then something that's sometimes called the fourth state, Turiya, the fourth, of the great waterfall, the great volcano, great shower of superconsciousness, which is India's prized possession. That's what they're bringing. That's what they're bringing. That's what the East is bringing to the West. So the Pujarini, if you remember, who sits in the shrine at noontime, for example, doing the worship mentally, silent, but a great deal is going on inside, is, according to our view, an Advaitist. He or she is doing this to attain her union with God or realize it was there all along. And the second has to do with, for example, the followers of Krishna, who, to me, my favorite phrase probably in the Bhagavad Gita is, and he's a child. He's a child. I mean, a young child. And the milkmaids, the shepherdess, saying, look, there the truth of Advaita is dancing. That's the second. And the third path is the path of the Jnani. Now, interestingly enough, I asked Swami Sheshan about this of set purpose in the temple one night myself. I want to do. Which is higher, Swami? The Jnani or the Vijnani? Vijnani is one who, instead of climbing up to the wall and jumping over and laughing, goes over and comes back. Why would someone like an avatar? Huh? Why would a superluminary who is living in perfection and knows it want to come back? Well, I think there's only one reason, and that has to be love. But you see, we're all asked to do the work of the Lord. The work of the Lord is to be of service to each other, really, in climbing the mountain of God, finding God. What greater life is there for all of the Indian folks that come to this country and hit the ground running than to serve in the ministry? Well, I like to say what Jesus said, bring the light to the Gentiles. We've mentioned it before, but you know the direct disciples of Jesus, the 12 of them, 11, whatever, they all thought that he was coming back in their lifetime in Israel. And he surprised them. You know, some of these are my favorite words, these kinds of words. He said, the field is the world. And he said, go and shed your light on the Gentiles. Does kind of put things in a different context. So, all of these paths, as far as the Ramakrishna Order of India is concerned, are Advaitic. We are Advaitists. There's no need to bother somebody about his path or her path. The only path that's relevant to you is your path. What we probably could do well, dashed I say should do well, to understand that there are these different ways up the mountain. Each one is sacred. Each one's there, put there for a place, for a reason. And there you are. Well, now, let's see what our beloved Abhedananda has picked out for us tonight. He's got something going on here. These are teachings of Swami Abhedananda, which just come as they come. And this is one of them. If you get a child, you should take proper care of it. Otherwise, it is likely that the child is afflicted with various kinds of diseases. A good deal of expense has to be incurred to bring up the children until they are fit to stand on their own feet. Ordinary folk do not take account of these facts. Boy, howdy. Marry without proper consideration and find themselves enmeshed in all sorts of troubles, diseases, sorrows, and the like. And my friends, you know, you ring my bell, come to the door. The problem, my friends, is overpopulation. Ramakrishna is pretty clear about it, and remember, he thinks everybody's reason for coming to the earth is to have God's vision, to see God as light, to love Him to pieces. 100%. That's the Vedanta path. So he's pretty clear about it. If you're going to be a spiritual aspirant, and if you are a householder, this is Vedanta. Have 2 children and then live together as brother and sister. Look upon your spouse as God in that form. Of course, Brahman. That's what we love. It says right there in one of the Upanishads that it's quite interesting. It says that the wife does not love the husband for the sake of the husband, but for the sake of the self, capital S, that dwells within the husband. Translating various ways, the husband does not love the wife for the sake of the wife, but for the sake of God that dwells within the wife. Think of it. Children don't love the parents for the sake of the parents, but for the sake of the self. This is the Atman within, true, infinite, one infinite shining, that dwells within the parents, and the parents do not love the children for the sake of the children, but for the sake of Brahman that dwells within the children. So why have so many? Pretty strong about these things. I think Vivekananda stands for reason. He says science and truth are all the religion there is in one mood. Truth, capital T. He would understand. Don't get much traction talking to lots of religious folk. I'm sorry. I think the number one problem on the relative plane that stands in the way of the knowledge of God is overpopulation. And the number 2 problem? Overpopulation. And the number 3 problem? Overpopulation. All of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse follow. Starvation, death, disease, war, whatever they are. To ask a whole hemisphere to relate to the waves of mysticism crashing up upon the rocks, particularly in the West, of the left hemisphere analytic, often thought of correctly as the locus of the male mind. Go into that another day sometime, but they've done some good work neurologically in the last, 20, 30 years. They find that indeed, little boys like 6 years old are left hemisphere dominant. It's like they're riding along in the hook and ladder, the fire engine, and the guy in the back is going like that. your eye happens to be connected with your left hemisphere. You know, your right hand's connected with your left hemisphere. Right. But the eye is so close. And I admit, it's just like William James, introspective psychology. It's not that difficult. Just sit there and check it out. I'm like that. I'm looking at the world through my left eye and my left brain. That's my nature. But little girls, they found out, are not right hemisphere dominant. The bridge between the two hemispheres, called the corpus callosum, is 4 times thicker in women. They have access to both sides of the brain. This is the year of the millennium, actually, of the women, you know. Some Swami in India, if I can find 2 that I can say, the Swamis say that the survival of human beings depends upon the feminization of the planet. Each person has her own, his own, and various Swamis paths. So, let's see what the good Swami has to say for us tonight. This is the play of Maya. Maya can be an escalator up or an escalator down. Everything in this world is fleeting and vanishing. That shows it's not real, right? Like a cloud passing in front of it. God alone is eternal and true. If you cling to Him, you will get peace and bliss. New paragraph, by serving the Lord, work as worship. This was Vivekananda's whole idea. Serve God and man. When you've done your shrine time, you want to see God, you want to get close to where God is, He's in the heart of a human being. Rich, poor, high, low. High, low, Jack in the game. By serving the Lord, the mind becomes pure. For Vivekananda, work is worship, and he got that idea from Sri Ramakrishna. So you should do work without attachment. There's no need of other hard tapasya, that's austerity, in the Kali Yuga, in this age. Without attachment means seeing Brahman in the person instead of Joe Clark, instead of somebody else, some other. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that human life in this age depends on food. And of course, Swami Vivekananda again said to preach religion to a man on an empty stomach is an insult. For the followers of the yoga path, that would be meditation primarily, there is need of what is ordinarily meant by tapasya. Hard austerities to control the turbulent senses and gain victory over lust, anger, greed, and other deadly foes of the spiritual life, the passions. But you are all bhaktas, the ones he's talking to, capital B, lovers, devotees of God, and not jnanis, the followers of the path of knowledge who repeat, quote, I am He. Hence, the way taught in the Gita to surrender yourselves, the people to whom he's speaking, wholly to the Lord, and take refuge in Him alone, giving up all other means, is the one to be followed by you. Know that there is no other tapasya, austerity, practice, superior to this. Practice to be like the kitten, calling on the mother, and remain with joy and satisfaction in the place and state in which she, capital S, the Divine Mother, puts you, capital D, capital N. This is my constant advice to all of you. Complete resignation to the will of the Divine Mother is what is wanted. You must become ever joined with the Lord, capital L, holy, without any distraction, pure and absolute single-minded devotion to the Lord is what you should cultivate. People he's speaking to. It is enough, he says in a new paragraph, that you cling to the Lord. I am his child. Quote, he who hath seen the Son hath seen the Father. Pray to the Lord with such a faith. My Father is in me, and I am in him. I and my Father are one. End quote. Consider whatever you do as service to the Lord. This is the work without attachment. Karma yoga for you. The karma yoga for you. The mind will attain purity by this means. This is your tapasya and sadhana. That's like meditative practice. The mind will become pure by this, and egoism will disappear. Remember the ego is a myth. It's a mirage. We quoted it even last week, Sri Ramakrishna speaking of the onion. And you go to look for the ego. You peel the onion. It's not there. I like the concept that describes the process of creation, if you will, the way it comes out, that says that the ego is the firstborn of ignorance. Then alone will you be able to surrender yourself wholly to the Lord. New paragraph. I know that you're suffering much, and I'm very sorry for it. But know that the Lord is making you do tapasya, that means these austerities, in this way. There is no need of any other tapasya, meditation, japa, reading of the scriptures, and such things for you. The work that you are doing is itself your tapasya, service to God and human beings, worship, not helping. Not patting somebody on, my dear, poor fellow, here's a nickel, here's a quarter, here's a dime. Vedanta is so powerful. The grandson of one of our devotees, while in high school, knowing that his grandmother, Kalyani, who founded American Service for India, helping get wonderful medical supplies in great numbers to people, went to India. And he fell in the deep end. And he found that Vivekananda at some point had said, translated into American English, no point giving somebody 50 cents and snapping your suspenders and considering that you've done something. Ask him his name. I've tried it a couple of times. It's not easy for an American. I reminded there was a subway down at Pershing Square in downtown LA, and I was going up, the man's going down, whichever way it was. Elderly gentleman. And I said something to him. And I said, what is your name? And he looked at me from his age of 50, 65 and said, Earl. Nobody had asked him that for at least 35 years. It's interesting that his name is Earl. In India, you know, everything's upside down. It's reverse. Because the real and the apparent lead you to these kinds of things. In India, you know, here we have the economic and social pyramid. And India is just upside down. Check it out. they call beggars Maharaj. The monks. So here's this man called Earl, and all of a sudden you got a different idea. It's kind of like instead of my poor man, it's kind of like, thank you. Vivekananda, had quite a time. He just attracted the world's attention. Scientists, people like Sarah Bernhardt, who was the great luminary on the stage at that time. John D. Rockefeller. And one time when he went to see Rockefeller, he, as did a Baptist minister also, Baptist minister said at one point, you better start signing checks so that the money's going to drown you. But Vivekananda, when he saw Rockefeller, said basically that he should start giving some of his money away. And when he came back, Rockefeller pointed to some papers or something on the desk and said, I've started to do what you told me. You should thank me. And Vivekananda said, you should thank me. Now, it just so happens that John D. Jr., who really started the Rockefeller Foundation, big time, the money was spent very carefully and very well. A mere $15 million started the Green Revolution in Mexico, growing corn, trying to work closely with the right hemisphere approach of the farmers. It escaped to the Philippines, where they started growing rice with this method. It then went from the Philippines to India, where India became a net exporter of rice. Don't tell me there is no God. They asked Carl Jung one time, and Carl Jung walked with our Abhedananda, our Hindu psychology Swami, in Bellarmine. And who knows? Somebody asked Carl Jung one time, do you believe God exists? He said, no. I don't believe God exists. I know he exists. And then he went on to study the 4 personality types, which are like 4 friends sitting around a table playing cards. And guess what? These 4 personality types are the 4 yogas. And they're very interesting because they're sitting playing together. And the partners, across the table, like bridge, if that's the way, play poker, I don't know. The partners are the path of knowledge and the path of work, and across from each other, the path of love and the path of meditation. So I think that the difference between spirituality and religion, if there is one, is that in spirituality it has to be about experience, just like science. Science is the path of experience. Experience is the criterion of validity. Don't you see? For both science and spirituality, therefore, Vivekananda, in a certain mood, gets up and says, science and religion, all the religion. Science and truth, all the religion there is. And our beautiful Swami Asheshananda, Holy Mother's oldest active living Swami, a disciple at that time, said, one of our men whose name was Vijnana Chaitanya, he said from the pulpit, don't be upset with us. The scientists are our friends, experiential. The theologians are not our friends. The scientists are our friends. Who's talking beauty today? The philosophers? I don't think so. With, of course, some exceptions. It's the scientists. It's the quantum physicists. They're admiring and imagining and envisioning a world which is are you with me? Microscopic. And it's Alice in Wonderland down there, folks. And it's, oh my. So Vedanta kind of gets all squirrely about this and gets the idea that if you got a church, and as Vivekananda says, I want a religion that will wipe away the widow's tear from her eye and feed her orphans. And Vedanta's got the idea that if you don't feel nothing, you might as well take two 2x4s and put it across the front door of the church and board up the church. At least you can hit the streets. At least you can do that. And say to the man going down the subway stairs, what's your name? Don't be surprised if he looks back at you and says, my name is Brahman. What's yours? Who you? Well, now listen to here. He says, consider whatever you do as service to the Lord, work as worship, not my dear man. Not helping, serving, worshiping. This is the work without attachment. The karma yoga for you. The mind will attain purity by this means. So he's saying the work that you're doing is in itself your tapasya, if it's this kind of thing. Know that it is superior. This is the Swami's talking to a certain group of people, huh? The one that stayed with us for 20, 25 years, now back home in India. Know that it is superior, he says, to dhyana and japa, the attempted concentration in meditation, and even chanting the name of the Lord, telling your beads. Do not disturb the mind with distracting thoughts. Know that distracting thoughts per se, by themselves, are demonstrating that they are the apparent and not the real. A road sign. Did you hear about the new bird that they got? I just saw the sign on the freeway on the one day I saw it was going down near the seashore. It didn't really, but it's fun. There's no left turn. Supposed to be a bird, T-E-R-N. All right. The point is that you sure you're on the funny side of the street if you got those things going on, because it cannot possibly be real. And the essence of the Jnani's approach is to distinguish between the apparent and the real. And yes, there is the path which says even in one day we can do all three of those things we spoke about. Worship, loving the path of a Krishna superluminary, as in the Bhagavad Gita, look, the gopis say, they're the truth of Advaita is dancing, and distinguishing between the apparent and the real. Ramakrishna has some interesting ideas about that too for some people. He says first jnana and then bhakti. You can get the essence, the gist of it within 24, 48 hours, and everybody thinks when they come up, oh, I'll probably get this done 24, 48 hours. And then go to work, whatever your work, with the guidance of your shepherd, the head Swami of the center, your own guru, whatever his guidance leads you to be in the true self of yourself. So he says, be satisfied with what comes unsought by his grace. You will be blessed by dedicating your life to his work. And there is this view that we have in Vedanta, quote, to work thou hast the right, but not to the fruits thereof. If one can work for love's sake, for the sake of desiring to see God, to be one with God, yea, to realize that one always is, was, has been, then you will not want the fruits of your work. This is the secret of getting over all of this attachment and misery stuff. You decide early in the morning, little boy, well, I'm going to give God a present tonight, my father. And so he gets this little box, like this, with white paper and a red bow. God knows it's a tie. Gives it to him with love. This is the secret of Karma Yoga. To work without attachment. To work, to extend your concept of your own being to include your neighbor, as we say, your community, your city, your country, the world. Filled with Brahmins everywhere, only one. Worshipping that in others as part of yourself. To work thou hast the right, but not to the fruits thereof. Jesus was pretty percipient, was he not, when he took the four commandments from Deuteronomy. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy mind, strength, soul. One of the Gospels only has all four of the yogas there. And then Jesus added to it and said, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Why? Because the neighbor is thyself. So the last single paragraph, I love one-sentence paragraphs. I think we were talking about it the other day, maybe you and I. To forget oneself is the characteristic of a holy man. Well, this has been quite an evening, I feel, because one of the most difficult things that we have in our lives, I think, as spiritual community, as spiritual aspirants, is to leave the other person alone. That is to say, not to make the effort to go over wherever that person is and bring him to your side of the circle. If we're on the perimeter of a circle and we're all going, let's say, to the center, to the sun, the closer we get to the center of the circle, the closer we'll be to each other. If I, as a good many of our parishioner friends do, go all the way over 180 degrees to the other side of the center to get you, and bring you all the way over 180 degrees to my side of the center, wasted a lot of time. and haven't really done a thing. Because my path, friend, not your path. And your path, none of my business. We got a wonderful fellow named Myron here. He's a bouncy fellow. Just told me yesterday he had a birthday, 69 years old. He acts about 5. No, I mean, we went to the Parliament of the World's Religions. You know what I'm saying? Some of us, quite a few of us, in Toronto a couple of years ago. And Myron sends me off. Woof! The farmer. Farmer boy. And the wisdom, He said, tell them, your God is my God. Not my power. You got? So why not all go to the center and leave the other fellow alone? That concept is what is done with the interface between the, say, the monks who are by definition supposed to be mystics and the devotees. Swami Krishna says it's good for the devotees to talk of God. That's different, right? Not God, that's different. But the head man, the shepherd, and in America every center has one, is the one to whom you can go and talk about your path. The fun part is that in America there are 2 things that are distinct from India. And our Swami Abhedananda told one of his grand disciples, a very well-known man, a great author. Matter of fact, Somerset Maugham at one point said, in this young man's hands lies the future of English letters. Said, you don't need to go to India. Everything is right here that he needed to find. But if one does go, one can understand that there is a distinct difference. And that's why Swamiji said, you know, I got a job. My minister, I got a message for the West, as Buddha had for the East. Swamiji said, you know, I think I'm going to have to come back. I've fallen in love with humanity. And then he said, after he had left the body, he said he would still be working, and that Vedanta itself would be alive and well for 1,000, 1,500 years. I mean, alive and well, vibrant. So, 2 things that we have that one notices right away in India is that you can go into the room of your guru, as our head Swami says here, on the outside door, just please knock and come in. And you don't even need to knock, but there's a reason for that, because other things are going on. People are there. So can't do that. You may see your guru even just once in your life in India. And the other thing that they have over here, receptive to Vivekananda coming with this message, he said, don't you see, that after he left the body, he would still be working until, says Vivekananda, every man, woman, and child in the world knows that he and she is one with God. So the other thing that we have that you don't find over there like that is diversity. They speak 180 languages, the children in schools at home in LA. I love it. There is no such thing as the American face. India surely can tell whether a person comes from this part of the country, that part of the country. We know very well just by looking at him whether a person is a Swede or an Italian or whatever it is in Europe. They have 14 mutually unintelligible languages in India. English helped out a lot as the polyglot interpretive language. there is no American face. What it means to be a true American, with its strengths and its shortcomings, is very much up for grabs. My friends, today, in this day Anno Domini of 2021, in this year of grace, there's a real evaluation going on as what it means to be an American. We've always thought it meant its highest ideal, truth and love. The Constitution, unlike any other in the world up to that time, we the people. We the people! Now, what we used to call in Southern Illinois, we pronounce things differently down there, the United States. In order to form a more perfect union, to henceforth and so forth describe. Dr. King's beloved community, incidentally, was not a done and finished deal. In his mind, it was a progressive march, if you will, God love them, and the people of this country to the promised land. Well, you know, we've had quite a time tonight, as we seem to do, sitting at the feet of the man that Vivekananda asked earliest and first to come over to this country on a more or less steady basis to exemplify, to extend to make relevant to the then Western mind the true meaning of Vedanta as in Vedanta society, of which all the members, all the aspirants, be they pujarinis doing the service quietly within worship at noon, or the people who adore the pujas, particularly because maybe their churches have taken out the stained glass windows and some of all of that incense and stuff, because they worship great souls. That is to say, the real spirit, capital S, in great souls. Some of them super luminaries, all of them super in Krishna. When they sing songs to Rama, it was said by one of the super luminaries, or at least totally, special, free soul. Swami Abhedananda, he saw Hanuman sitting in the congregation. To Jesus, even, we have something special for him. And Sri Ramakrishna. And for the man or woman who hopefully through the grace of God and his guru has decided to try the hardest path of all, which is to keep one's mind fixed totally on the idea that one is already united with God. And my friends, we are all Advartists. How are we doing?